What's up, Starcraft fans? This video is brought to you by Endarthe, who is supporting me on Patreon. Pulse Cannon tier supporters or higher are guaranteed one video attention per month. This month, it is going to be a Wiki review of Karax. So this is a review of the Wikia page that you can search for Karax and co-op missions. So we have Eveling at home with us today. Eveling, how are you?
Been good. Had a few beers and a shot of pretty strong tequila, so I'm ready for this.
All right, sounds perfect because that's exactly what you need to talk about Karax. So uh, let's actually begin. So this is the first intro for Karax. What do you think about it?
The only thing I have a little gripe with it, utilizes an array of advanced Protoss weaponry and purifier type units to yield an army of robotic attackers. No mention of his cannons and stuff like that because that's what he's very well known for. And advanced Protoss weaponry is like some of it is kind of janky. It's kind of like let's look at Artanis. Artanis has warp gates, warp robotics, warp Stargate, and why can't Karax get some of that? It would change Karax's playstyle immensely if his Robo and Stargate could warp in.
Could warp
But
in.
I get it for balance reasons. But
Plus,
yeah,
like,
it's a little janky for lore wise.
that's one of the few things that Artanis has, and now you want to give it to Kara,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Anyway, let's move
Why
on.
why not?
Let's move on. So next up, we have the basic information about his race and his strengths and weaknesses. What do you think about this, Eveling?
It hits on the basics of Karax. The guess the only thing that I have a small gripe with is his weakness. Hard to push on his own. He can push on his own, but a lot of new players cannot do it because they don't want to build sentinels. They want to go mass carriers, and that takes forever to pump out. I mean, granted, if your macro is good, then you can pump it out by the 5 minute mark. But yeah, he has a lot of tools to actually push pretty good, keep things locked in place so you can spear a Dune stuff. But not too many players want to delve into that because Sentinels are not as glamorous as those um, overpriced balloons that we call
Overpriced
carriers.
balloons. Okay, that's fair. Late game dominance, yes, is also a good thing for Karax, but I mean, don't you feel like other commanders have kind of overtaken him in terms of late game strength?
Yes, especially with the prestiges.
Yeah,
Maybe beforehand, maybe yeah, because once you get to late game, if you've been good about getting all your upgrades to the Solar Forge, then yeah, he's pretty potent late game. But with prestiges out,
not just the
yeah,
prestigious,
there's a
like
few commanders.
the later commanders in general, like Tychus, Zeratul, Stetboy, Arcturus. I feel like the power creep has gotten to Karax, right?
Mm,
Or do you think he can still
yeah,
hang with
yeah,
them?
definitely. That when you mean the power creep of the more later
The
release
later
commanders,
commanders.
definitely Karax fell behind, and that's why he needed the prestiges. I mean, for
Oh
a
yeah,
long time there was that meme before prestiges that they there was a trash can, and then Karax said toss into there, and throw Karax into there.
he'll take it.
So prestiges definitely made Karax a lot better. Now Swan is in Karax's place for most parts.
Yeah, I guess. All right, let's move on. Okay, by the way, guys, anytime you need to pause to read, you can pause the video. You can just click that. It's simple enough to read. Next, we have the info on the commander screen and the masteries you can select for Karax. What do you think, Eveling?
It's pretty straightforward information other than I mean it's stated facts other than recommended for experienced players. I mean that's the big meme that was it Jimmy,
Rainer. Yeah,
Kerrigan,
Rainer.
and Artanis are recommended for everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah, Rainer. And then everyone else is recommended for experienced players. No, I would not
yeah.
consider
Absolutely.
Tychus recommended for experienced players or Zagara, but Karax maybe a little bit. He's not as straightforward.
The fun thing about
as
Karax
like
is,
rounder Protoss.
I think about Karax is he's one of those commanders that relies on his top bars. And something that I noticed whenever people transition from not transition, or at least people who are in 1v1, who play 1v1 and try co-op, they really don't like to use their top bars. Whenever I watch someone, yeah, who usually does that stuff, that's the thing I notice. Like, they tend to focus on producing, which is good. It's really good to produce stuff, but it's there. It's there for you to use. And if you're not using it, I feel like that's you're leaving free power on the table. That's otherwise gonna make you really good. Other than that, yeah, that's I would say he's perfectly fine for beginners who just like using top bars, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, to be fair, all of us who've played co-op for a long time, we've at one point in our co-op careers became, oh, I forgot to use my top bar all this time, and it's like it's just something that we had to drill onto our heads. Is top bars are free DPS
That's true.
or semi-free DPS. So make use of all the tools that you have to them, and that's what made us become better co-op players. And yeah, it's just that transition period that all of us had to go through, and some people are still going through because there's still some new players coming through, which is awesome.
Which is awesome. Yeah, I've long maintained that the key to a healthy game is to have new players come in and supplant the old guard. Like when if don't know if you watched the recent tournament, like people are complaining that for example, this race is too strong, or this guy should be able to beat that guy. I actually think differently. Like, I feel like it should be the natural cycle, the natural cycle of a game, to have new players replace the current greatest players, if that makes sense. Not all time, but really, the greatest player right now should not be the same guy toward the whole for the whole duration of the game. Otherwise, that won't encourage new players to come in and try their hand at catching up. Because I feel like that's kind of what makes a game healthy. If you have new players coming in all the
Things
time,
fresh.
yeah, something like that. So anyway, that's kind of a tangent. Let's actually move on. Next slide, again, you can pause anytime you want, are the prestige options for Karax. First prestige, Arc of War. Second prestige, Templar Parent. Third prestige, Solar Celestial. What do you think, Eviling?
There's nothing to dispute on here. These are the facts of each prestige. I mean, there's probably some subtle nuances in here that might be missing, but it covers most of it, I think.
All right, fair. So these are just facts. You can just read them. You can just pause and read them, and then you can move on. Next up, we have a strategy guide, the general gist of how Karax plays. What do you think about this, Eviling?
It sort of keys in on stuff, but I feel some bias in ways of the author, how they play characters. The thing that really catches my attention is second to the last sentence. Only problem is Karax's units suffer from lack of mobility, making mobilizing from point to point a little more tedious, especially when defending positions without the support of cannons and monoliths. I mean, yes, if you're going mass carriers, yeah, they're super. They lack mobility, but take a look at Mirages. Take a look at Sentinels. They move around at a pretty good pace. And one thing to really note here is the main thing is for Karax, if you have vision, you don't really need to worry about mobility. You
That's what I
have
was thinking.
Spear of Doom that could hit anywhere. So I think that's a severe lack. Um, it didn't air out in this strategy point, and that's why I feel that this person has wrote something on Karax, but has really delve into Karax and understand the nuances.
I think it's fair what you said. I think the only thing that the writer was considering is how Karax compares relative to other commanders. Because yes,
Mm-hmm.
when you consider Karax on his own, he does absolutely have options to be everywhere on the map. But still, you have to be looking at that spot instead of just using the mini map to send your guys there and just trusting that they get there. It's actually pretty helpful when you're back home, building stuff, upgrading stuff, building pylons, warping in units, it's one less thing to worry about, one fewer thing to worry about. We can just select your army on your keyboard and then click on the minimap to send them there without having to actually look at that specific spot. But again, what you said is completely fair. He does actually absolutely have that option by just CG an observer, setting a mirage, having static defense, and then just going to town with your top bars. So I think both of you have accurate points. My personal issue with this is he is overall more of a support commander. I think he does have supporting abilities that are very useful in buffing his ally, but you can be perfectly fine being the star of the show, being the carry as Karax, because you have a powerful thing called the Spear of It, as Evoling said, which you can use to both push and defend. And even if you don't go for the units, his towers, his cannons and models are still pretty good to anchor your push with your Spear of Adun, right?
Absolutely, because one major point about Karax's units, they're most of them are pretty durable. So a lot of people like to, when they do carrier rushes, they think, oh, the carriers are gonna be the main damage point of the unit. Actually, carriers are great for just drawing enemy aggro, and then you can is like
Spear of
have
Adun.
them locked in place. It's easier to hit your Spear of Adun abilities. So
Absolutely. Anyway, that's about it. Most of it is right. There were just a few things that we had to bring up that were not necessarily the only thing that was keeping Karax in, but that's the thing. Let's move on. We move on to Mastery strategy. So this is the first power set where you have a choice between extra health on your units, extra health on your structures. So what do you think, Eviling?
it's pretty straightforward of what's being said. My only discrepancy is when it comes to the structure, life, and shields. It's They say it's useful when you plan to play extremely defensively and rely on static defense with turtling as your primary strategy. I disagree with that. I've seen a lot of good Karax players that make offensive cannons, and it's pretty effective. And the other thing is, you don't have to side with one or the other. You can do both, especially one that I see that has gotten me out through many mutations is if you play P1, doesn't mean you can't make any units. Sentinels are very tanky once you get their reconstruction upgrades, so you can help them to push or divert attention while your probe goes in and starts building up the cannons.
That's actually a very good point.
And that's a great way to push in. So yeah.
All right, that's fair. Although I actually mostly agree with this. You generally want more structure health when you're going for a tower style, and you want more unit health when you're going for the Templar Apparent Prestige, where you want more units. But that is true. There are exceptions where if you can't play that style, definitely go for it. But generally, I do want to increase the masteries on whichever style I'm going for. Let's move on. Here's the second set. You have an option to have either more repair beam healing rate, so you can have your units heal faster, or you have Chrono Wave Energy Regeneration, which means every time you use your Chrono Boost ability, the third top bar, you will get extra energy on your Spear of Adun. What do you think about this option, or this advice, Eviling?
So the one thing that stands out to me is the Chrono Wave Energy Regeneration allows you to save resources on solar efficiency upgrades and is a superior choice for mass carrier composition. That kind of grinds my gears. Is like, it's not just for mass carriers, guys. It's like Karax has a whole bunch of other units that are just as effective and in fact can be online more effective than going mass carriers. It, it's Sentinels, Immortals, having mirages start coming out, and then once you get their phasing armor up, and especially if you use the Chrono Wave Surge to pump out that upgrade quick, it can really catapult you so that you're not the usual turtle Karax. You are actually a threat to aim on and actually can carry your own weight rather than relying on ally to carry you through the early game.
I
Otherwise, everything else is pretty straightforward.
I agree. Karax does have a lot of viable options, but I think in general, when you go for carriers and you can get away with just being greedy early on and just relying on your top bars and your static defense to hold the line while you get up to, let's say, well, sentinels or top bars to hold the line while you grab like a fast four carriers, they are very difficult to destroy for Amon in a way that
Mm-hmm.
immortals, not even immortals, can manage. Like you can get away with not losing a single carry the entire game, even if you're not that great. Whereas for immortals, if you're up against stuff like Cyclones, Liberators, on Zerg side, the Lurkers, Swarm Hosts, Banelings even, or if you're up against Protoss Reavers, Disruptors, it's kind of easy to lose a bunch of immortals as the game progresses. Whereas you pretty much only gain value over time with carries. That's my reason, at least, for why I just prefer going carries myself. Although I understand it's actually equally viable to go for those other units like Immortals, Colossus, Sentinels, even Energizers are pretty fun to use when you want to steal aim on stuff. But yeah, it's just, especially for mutations, I find that carries are generally more robust because you don't want to trade with Amon. You want to just gain value over time. But as to going back on topic, as to this choice between healing rate and energy regeneration, yeah, I actually don't agree with saving resource on solar efficiency upgrades. You still want to get your solar efficiency upgrades. You just you just supplement the energy regeneration with that mastery. But I think I also agree that they're both viable. Although there are some sources that say that the repair beam healer is not that worth it. Have you read that?
I've seen that before, and I know one person that probably knows the details of that who doesn't play anymore, Mr. Aeon Master. But yeah, I still put points in repair beam healing rate. Um, I do how I usually split my masteries on this. I put enough into Chrono Wave energy regeneration, if not P3, so that if I hit it once, it's gonna regain me enough energy to get off at least a few Spear of Adun attacks. So roughly 21 points, or yeah,
That's another thing to take into
well, not 21 points in the Spirit Mastery. It's seven points will get you about 21 energy into the soul Spirit of Adun.
That's another great point that you've made.
One.
If you are on the third prestige, you will not have Chrono Wave. So if you are the third prestige, the repair beam healer rate is pretty much your only choice for the second power set. But yes, great point, Evoling. Let's actually move on. Now we have the third power set option, where you can choose between Spear of Rune Energy and Chrono Boost Efficiency. What do you think, Evoling?
Yeah, it pretty hits it head on. Yeah, putting your points into initial Spear of Adun energy allows you to very quick expansions. Even if it's a contested expansion, a non-rock
Yeah,
one. Yeah,
it's actually easier because you can just use
especially
Solar
Solar
Lance.
Lance.
Yeah, it's actually easier for contested
Exactly, and
expansions for Karax. Yeah,
mhm.
absolutely agree. I think,
A,
yeah.
a map that's really nice for that. Mal Warfare. It's like,
Oh
oh,
yeah,
you got the high ground vision. Like Solar Lance it down. It's like, oh, thank you, Amon, for free expansion.
re-expansion.
Or was it 50 energy? Um,
Sometimes on maps
I
like
guess
Chain of Ascension, I just take the gas so I can get vision without endangering my probe, and I can just use my Solar Lance from there. I think it's pretty neat.
same.
All right, so we pretty much
Um,
agree with this
my
one.
only gripe,
Yeah,
my gripe is just Chrono Boost efficiency has niche uses as made redundant by Chrono Wave. I wouldn't say that because like on non P3 or having that chrono efficiency because Chrono Wave doesn't become available till later, and if you depending on how you do your early macro, if you get enough gas, you can start chronoing out that first solar efficiency upgrade before Chrono Surge becomes available, and that can make a big difference. So, and especially for if you play a lot of P1, keep in mind you can chrono your cannons and monoliths.
That's true.
So that usually for P1 I do 15-15 split so that I have the ability to chrono, especially on the last mutation that we're cycling through, Burning Legion. It really paid off, having that chrono on the cannon for the first rift sets. It makes a difference. So, yeah,
For
take it
me, I
as you
just
will, but that's my point on it.
for me, anytime I'm on a Void Reputation, I just go for a full Spear of Odin. I just full send Spear of Odin, and I just chrono boost, not chrono boost. I just get my solar efficiency upgrades and my vision out as early as I can. That's the name of the game. Having enough energy for the Void Rifts. So that's the game for me.
Uh,
So I actually agree with
knowing
this.
you,
Yeah.
knowing you, for most void risks, you only play P3, so you have no choice.
Kind of.
Yeah, I like to dabble around with all the procedures. So
That's fair. Okay,
moving on.
move on. Okay, moving on. We are on prestige strategies this time, where it talks about each prestige. So first we'll go to Architect of War. What do you think, Eviling?
On the surface, this is pretty straightforward. It's correct, but I would like to add, is like, there's the entire mantra: the best defense is a good offense, and he does mention that you can do offensive cannoning, and you should be doing that. And then the other major strong point of P1 Karax, if you can get to the point where you can camp spawn points, oh yeah, his cannons and monoliths can really mince things up, especially if you have the Chrono Wave Surge ready to go. And the other aspect, I think, I'm not surprised is not mentioned in this, but if there's a mutation, and there is one that kind of penalizes you for having units or having taking up supply, E1 Karax is very efficient
Sharing is
on
caring.
supply because, and it's, yeah, exactly. So there's saying that his army is completely compromised. I don't agree with that either because, yeah, without repair beam, but Sentinel reconstruction kind of doesn't really need repair beam. Yeah, I mean, in the long run, it does add up to
It does
more
add up.
stuff. But if
I don't think he says it's
yeah, but if you
crippling. It's a crippling deficiency,
yeah
but it does take away from another strength that he has. So maybe that's what he was trying to get across, right?
yeah, I know that's what he's trying to get across, but I'm just saying that don't think you should never be making any units as Karax
Oh yeah,
P1.
definitely.
It's yeah.
All right. Yeah, pretty much agree with what you
Yeah.
said. Let's actually move on. Second prestige, we will have Templar Apparent, where he has cheaper units. What do you think, Eviling?
So it's pretty straightforward on about Templar Apparent, and the author hits most of the points. The only thing I have a little gripe with is saying that there is no other detection other than your observers. No, there's another form of detection. It's called death by the space lasers. You don't need, if you have a vague idea where your cloaked unit is, you space laser that sucker down.
That's
And
true.
um, yeah, so I wouldn't say it's where's the word that he mentioned? Deceptively severe. I wouldn't call it deceptively severe. It's like um, one map that is well known for you getting nuked by ghost is Oblivion Express. Or you have cannons, just park observers there, and then usually the ghosts are, they always kind of tend to come from a certain angle. So even if you don't have an observer there, solar lance the area where you think it might be, and if you're lucky, you're gonna cancel out that nuke.
But if you're not
So,
lucky,
otherwise, yeah, then um, if you're not lucky, hope Unity barrier is up for your stuff, and ha.
Voila, problem solved. I've actually encountered some problems on Oblivion Express specifically, where the spooky boy sometimes goes up my ally's ramp and then nukes my base. I'm not sure if you've experienced that. I have. He just goes straight
I
past,
have.
right? He just goes straight past
It's like,
my ally's base and
what
just
did I
targets my
do?
base.
Is it because I'm outperforming ally that you're gonna go after me? Is that what it is, aim on? Yeah. Usually, if I see like, usually I leave my ally on Oblivion Express to um
Devices.
their own devices def- to defend their ramp. But if I notice that it's a clear path, there's nothing for the ghost to, oh, here's my ally's base, I can nuke that. If he hasn't built out and it's a clear path from the ramp to my base, I'll put observer right at the edge of my base so I know, okay, it's gonna try to come for me
Yeah.
and deal with it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's just annoying. But you do
It
sometimes need
is.
to siege up observers, and just having the spear of Adun is not enough to stop the spooky boy, especially if it's from a weird angle. But yes, that's basically my
Mm.
point. Anyway, everything else I'm pretty much on board with. He did say that it cancels the penalty on cost. I would like to go further than that. It actually makes it cheaper than the regular units because it's a 50%
Mhm.
discount, whereas you only get a 30% penalty on the basic Karax. So it's actually like a 20% discount overall, which is pretty nice. Anyway, let's actually move on. Third prestige, we have Soul Right Celestial, where you don't have Chrono, but you do have more efficiency with Spear of Doom by having cheaper attacks with them. So what do you think, Eviling?
I think the author hit this pretty good compared to the other two. My only gripe is saying that P3 Karax doesn't have momentum. Karax, P3 Karax has quite a bit of momentum. It's the thing is you got to be able to hit your Spear of Aduna abilities and be efficient with it. So the problem that I see many P3 Karax players, they will just spam orbital strikes and blow all their energy on that. Solar Lance, the one of the major things for P3 Karax is the cooldown on Solar Lance is reduced, so make use of that. It's a very efficient use of your energy for the amount of power it delivers. Granted,
Absolutely.
if you whiff all three of them, then okay, I don't know what to say about that. But yeah.
Yeah, that's I don't think I've ever whiffed on all three of us Solar Lands, but it's much easier to whiff on Orbital Strike than it is to whiff Solar Lands. That's all I'm gonna say. But yeah, agree with you on that. It's pretty much spot on. Let's actually move on.
I
Next up, we have gameplay tips for Karax. This one is called Grand Design. It's basically a, a tip on informing your ally when you're about to use the Chrono Boost, and uh, tells you to upgrade your Spear of Rune efficiency. So, what do you think about this, Eviling?
Yeah, no, it's good courtesy to let your ally know. Now, one exception. A very balanced commander named Zeratul. Don't bother informing him that you're gonna chrono.
Why?
It does nothing for him. It just, I mean, granted, if he's trying to mass ambushers, mass void templars, maybe that's useful. But for upgrades, Zeratul doesn't depend upon that. So, um, early on, it definitely helps to let your ally know. And then later on in the game, when it starts getting more frantic, I wouldn't worry too much. It's probably your ally if they're on their upgrades. Probably the first three chronos would be helpful to inform. Otherwise, after that, just play the game, have fun.
Yeah. Uh, Usually I do inform my allies. Like, try to inform your ally 20 seconds before it is actually ready, so you're not delayed on the actual chrono boost. Like, the first chrono becomes available at 5 minutes. At 4 minutes 30 seconds, inform your ally. I'll have chrono boost in 30 seconds. That's all you need. That's usually enough to give them time to start with the research and upgrades. And it is pretty good, even if you're not going to use the current right away. It will inform them to catch up on their macro and their upgrades, usually. And as to the Zeratul thing, it is, if you're on the first prestige, and your ally Zeratul going cadence, that might be a pretty good combination right there. He just warps all those cannons. He just projects the cannons, and then you use current boost, and then the cannons will lead the rest of the game, or yeah, the rest of the map, the rest of the game even. So that's one instance where I think even Zeratul, who's not going for units, will be able to benefit from your Chrono. So let's move
That's
on.
very fair. Um, so it's not just for your ally. In some sense, I like doing inform the ally because if you're on point with your macro, you're usually not floating resources, especially early game. And then so just the act of typing out that you're about to do a chrono search, it allows some of those resources to pool up, so you can start doing up all your upgrades ready to go, and then you and then by the time you actually do hit the button, you can keep on making as much use of the chrono surge as possible.
Next up, we have Intricate Machinery. Just basically talks about the Energizer and its ability to mind control stuff. What do you think, Eviling?
It's pretty straightforward. The Energizer's ability is useless against Zerg. Um, it's useless against Zerg, but if you're on a map or mutation that it starts mixing, you have mixed forces. One map that comes to mind, Scythe of Aemon. Mutation that comes to mind is Voidrus. They start making mixed forces. So even if you have a Zerg enemy, that doesn't mean you should not ever get the reclamation. But it's kind of, yeah, you need to know what you're going up against.
Really?
So
I would not waste my money on Reclamation. It feels so niche when you're just using it because there's Void Rifts on Scythe of Aemon. No, I'd rather just go straight to Carriers. Or, why would I bother with Carriers? I would just turtle up, Siege Observers, then win. Wasting money
mm,
on
I,
Energizers. When you're Karax on Scythe of Aemon. My goodness. Eviling. I'm disappointed.
that's ridiculous. I think someone's
Just
trolling me
win!
because yeah, just win.
Just
Forget
win!
every other detail in this video and just get good and just win, kids.
I mean, it's Scythe of Aemon and you're Karax. You have Spear of Adun. Why bother with anything else? Right?
I'm not just saying Sky to Aemon. It's like if you have some other, if you're dealing with polarity plus just
Okay,
die,
okay.
stuff like
Polarity.
that.
Polarity makes sense, yeah. Although I don't think the mind control works on polarized units. I don't
Not
think it
on
does.
polarized units, but if you have polarized plus just die while it's on your while it's polarized for you,
Ah, yeah,
make
yes.
control of it before it flips to your ally, so it takes that out of the pool.
That I absolutely agree with, but not if it's
Yeah.
Zerg. That's the only thing. Not if it's Zerg. And yes, Zerg generally makes me not research the reclamation at all. I will still get energizers for my static defense, so they can get boost and stuff. But reclamation, I don't think that's a good idea when the enemy is Zerg.
Not just for static defense, for your army too, because it boosts your army, boosts your
That's
allies'
true.
army.
Energizer's great, but reclamation, I just don't get it when enemy is Zerg. That's just me though. You can feel free to uh, follow whoever you believe in. Let's move on. So we have this next section, and my expertise is yours. It talks about, well, uh, characters ramp up time. Let's say. What do you think, Eviling?
Oh man, this one, like the author was like kind of, for the most part of this review, he is somewhat there, nothing too erroneous to dispute. This one is just wow, it really grinds my gears. Almost every sentence in this one is a trigger point for me. The only sentence in here that doesn't trigger me too much is because his unit cost is 30% more. You shouldn't play Karax like you play any other hero. Yeah, you shouldn't play Abathur like how you play Raynor.
Exactly.
You shouldn't be playing.
Dahaka,
Yeah, it,
Nova,
don't play
Zeratul,
them like Han and Horner. Yeah.
Tychus,
Oh boy.
Swan, Kerrigan.
Well, let's let's start off with the bloodbath. So, the first sentence: character strength is about researching technology. Okay, okay. Aiding partners with spells, deploying static defense. Okay. You have the strongest hero powers by far and strongest static defense by a significant margin. No, there are a lot other top bars that are over or extremely strong. I mean, are we comparing um, Purifier Beam to Nuclear Annihilation or like a Concentrated Beam? That's just ridiculous. It's you have strong hero powers. Now, if he means that okay, you always have a nice pool of Spirit of Doom energy that you can deploy anywhere. Okay, that is something unique to Karax.
I'd rather have time stop.
Strongest static defense by a significant margin. No, I would not call Karax's defense like. I mean, it is strong. Yes, don't get me wrong.
Maybe the
But
sturdiest.
yeah, sturdiest.
It has
Sturdiest
shield
is
batteries.
a better word for that.
They have shielding. They have
Yes.
repair beam. They have unity barrier sometimes. Yeah, maybe sturdiest, but
But if you're
strongest.
if you're talking strongest for like splash damage, Swan easily wins out on that. For how hard it hits, yeah, definitely. Okay, if you're trying to deal with multiple air threats, yeah, that's definitely gonna be hitting harder than Karax's stack defenses unless it's under Chrono Surge. But yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Next one. The drawback is that his standing army is pitifully small. No, you running P2 or I mean, it doesn't even have to be P2. If your macro is good, you can pump out a good army in a quick bit, especially if you're timing it with your Chrono Surge or making good use of your uh of Chronos itself. So yeah,
You can
and
max out
I guess this
with
kind of
Karax at 30 minutes while fighting constantly.
exactly, and that brings us to the next couple horrid sentences that I'm looking at. Is like at the end of the game, you only have 8 to 10 carries. Hell no! It's like you look at CTG's videos, like people like CTG, Tutu, and Calagon, they'll have freaking at least 20 carriers if you can count that many when they're stacking up on each other. So no, that's a definite no. If you only have 8 to 10 carriers at the end of the game, and if you're just massing carriers, you need to work on your macro, boy.
Or, you know,
Because his units cost.
to be fair, sometimes you get paired
Well,
with a strong player, and they do finish the game. For example, if you're on Void
yeah,
Thrashing, if you're on Rift of Core Hall, sometimes your ally just finishes the game before you get to that point. So, in a sense, I can get where this guy's coming from, but overall,
okay, yeah, that is fair. On a short map, that is fair. That is fair. I did not
yeah,
account for that.
that's true. So, but yeah,
And
I do
alas,
totally get what you're saying. As long as you are able to get your macro going, if you're on point with your build, if you're not wasting your building's production time by just not queuing up units, you should be able to field a powerful army before the end of the game.
yep. But now that leads to the very last sentence. The first 10 minutes of the game, Karax only has token defense force. No, if you are only pumping out your first carry at 10 minutes, you are doing it wrong. Work on your macro, boy. Only at 15-minute marks will production ramp up. No,
And max up by
if
13
you
minutes.
are, yeah, yeah. I mean, if anything, the latest. I mean, if you're getting pressured, okay, from like void risks, and whatnot, okay, I get that. But
Yes.
otherwise, you should be able to have a substantial force by 8 to 9 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, okay. So for the most part, this wiki has been fine. This particular section is not it. Let's move on. Alright, this next section, We Are All Templar, is about ground units. What do you think, Eviling?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I really like the fact that he keys down on it. It's with the Sentinel's reconstruction upgrade, you're essentially getting 2 zealots for the price of one. And if you are very judicious, you can get 3, 4, 5 zealots for the price of one if you kind of figure out which ones have already went through the reconstruction protocol, have them kind of be on the back line so they can reset the reconstruction protocol.
It's a long
Then
cooldown,
that
though. It's a
really
4 minute
helps out.
cooldown. I don't think
It's a
it's
long
worth it.
cooldown.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you can, and
I mean,
keep in
one
mind
would
you got
I
you got
would
a couple.
argue, I would argue that if it only costs, if you're on the second prestige, it only costs 80 minerals. I would just send it in, replace it. The 80 minerals is not worth 4 minutes of just dead supply sitting in the back, regenerating
Oh
a unity barrier and the reclamation.
no, I'm not saying it. Keep it all the way back at your expo or your main. You just make sure that one's not on the front line. So when you do engage,
We'll just clean up.
your front line, yeah, he's clean up, but he's also part of the enemy. So if he gets whacked, that's okay. But he's gonna not take the first hits
I guess that's fair.
when you take an engagement.
That sounds fair. Although, I guess with the kind of strategies they go for, the Sentinels get the brunt of the damage, so maybe it's not
Mhm.
entirely fair to try and expect that from most players. But okay, continue.
Yeah, no, it's not there. Yeah, otherwise, um, yeah, his army is very cost efficient and powerful, and which is kind of yeah. It sounds like there was a a kind of flip of what he was saying earlier, that his army is like is I forget what the word he was saying, almost dismissive of them. But yeah, I think as he is writing this down, then he kind of gave it more thought on the meaning of all the units that Karax can produce.
It's almost like anyone's free to edit and the wiki anytime and just piece together bits and pieces here and there.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh, what a
Maybe
concept!
maybe different people wrote these different sections, but I don't know.
Mm,
Let's actually
yep,
move on
maybe.
because we mostly agree with this part. Let's move on.
Yep.
Okay, next we have Chrono Boost activity. It just talks about Karax's chrono abilities. What do you think, Eveling?
Yeah, I like this. I think you're right. Someone uh these next section, this section and the last section, it sounds like someone we kind of changed a little author. A lot of more of this is starting to line up with what I'm expecting from someone who's played Karax a good amount and has delved into the many different facilities that Karax can offer. Saturating for your first chrono boost, yes, definitely saturate your economy as soon as possible. That allows you to steamroll into your mid and late game. If you can, if resources are available, use your first chrono surge to saturate, and also pump out that solar efficiency upgrades or your solar forge upgrades, because
Absolutely.
those are really what can catapult you later.
Absolutely.
Building additional nexus, I've seen this done before, and yeah, people who usually start building additional nexuses with their floating minerals just so they can chrono boost different building facilities, or even chrono boost their allies. I really take note of that. I know, okay, I'm playing with a gamer. Okay.
I generally also agree with the Chrono Boost stuff. I just think there's a bit of mistake on the first sentence. I don't think that Chrono Boost on Character's Nexus is slightly stronger. He just has a passive Chrono. He gets at level 2. He has a passive Chrono across all buildings and his allies' buildings that you get
Hmm.
when you unlock level 2. I don't think it's the Nexus per se. It's the commander. It's commander wide, not just the Nexus. And you will get a better Nexus, but you'll have to expend mastery points on it. I don't think that's worthwhile. That's about the only thing though. The rest I agree with, right?
Yep.
All
Yep.
right, let's move on. Next section, I apologize for covering the target them easily section of this box, but it talks about orbital strikes. So what do you think, Eveling?
So the first sentence I'm pretty okay with. Um, it one thing it doesn't really talk about that is, yeah, I wouldn't expect too many players to notice. So when you target with orbital strikes, it comes out. It's say it's important to lead your shots at moving enemies. It comes out. It takes time to land.
There's delay.
If you hold shift, yeah, if you hold shift, you can kind of rapid fire it. So it's like if you can lock on to the enemy and then you know it's gonna take 6 shots, rather than if you don't hold shift, then you gotta click and it comes down one, and it's a lot slower. If you hold shift, then you can just like bombard that thing down. So that's, I'm kind of surprised that's not mentioned, because yeah, this starts talking about intricacies of how to use orbital strikes. Now, I don't know if this section is solely focused regarding orbital strikes,
It is.
because early on, okay, then so we'll not consider solar lance
Yeah, it's just
considering
Solar
here.
Lance. Although that's probably something I would bring up. Like Solar Lance is generally better for waves. I only use Orbital
Yes.
Strike pretty much on the rocks and Static Defense because Static Defense takes extra damage. And there are two things here. You're absolutely right that when you use Shift, you essentially here's the logic. Here's how it works. When you hold Shift, you essentially cue the Orbital Strikes, so all your clicks count. When you don't hold down Shift, sometimes the it just overrides the previous command. So instead of adding a shift or adding an orbital strike, you replace a previously issued command for orbital strike. Does that make sense? So you don't, if you click 3 times with the shift and you click very fast, you queue up the first one, and then you queue up a second one. And the third one cancels out the second one and just adds another second one elsewhere. Whereas if you hold shift, it will queue up all three, and all three will shoot. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right.
Or to me it does. As to the viewers, that's another thing. Who knows? Good luck, guys.
If you click 5 times very fast, and the orbital strike is still orbital striking, only the first one will register. The next four will trigger as replacing each other. So the second one will issue the command for the second one will issue. The third one, if the second one hasn't shot yet, will override the second one, and the fourth one will override the third one, and the fifth one will override the fourth one. So only the first and the last shots will count if you click too fast. But if you hold shift, all of them will register. They're just queued one after the other. And the other thing is, do not, please do not spam orbital strike on a single ground hybrid. Absolute waste of energy. Just no, never. I've seen a lot of guys do this. Never spam orbital strike on a single hybrid unless it's like the difference between victory and defeat in that one moment. I would rather have zealots. I would rather have carriers, immortals, cannons, monoliths shooting down the hybrid than my precious spear of rune energy. That's all. No questions. I'm not gonna take your questions. That is just a fact. Do not spam on a single hybrid. Anything else you'd like to add?
Hey, if you want to flex on Amon, go ahead and do it, but
No.
it's definitely not the most efficient thing to do.
It has too much health. It's not worth spamming orbital strike on, especially when you want to use it on bigger things like a huge attack wave coming in a minute. You want to have energy for a Solar Lance, or if you're a
So, let me
Sky
clarify.
right?
If you need to flex and it's the equivalent of taking a battle cruiser and you're modeling a Zergling, go for it. You want to flex that option, go right ahead. But that's what you're doing.
I guess that is what you're doing.
One
Yeah.
one thing I would like to add upon is the first sentence of the second paragraph. It is advisable to research orbital stun strike upgrade when attacking into fortified enemy positions
I never do that.
against certain enemy compositions. Yeah, I usually, I mean, death is a pretty good form of crowd control. So just kill it. The only times I do get orbital strike over the fire for
Solar
solar
Lance.
lance is if I'm dealing with a really nasty air composition where I need to have that stun on them. But it's rare on that because even remember solar lance also
Deletes
it's
air.
air. So yeah, so again, the best form of crowd control is death.
That's one way to put it. All right, let's move on. Now we move on to Commander Synergies. First one, we have Terran and Raynor. What do you think, Eveling?
This one is yeah, this is atrocious. This one, he hits upon like the real simple aspects of it. Um, only decently with Karax. No, he Raynor synergizes pretty good with Karax,
Pretty well.
but then again, we could say this might be tailored to maybe just regular normal brutal play and not used to like the extracting the real major synergies that you usually get on mutations. So let's go sentence by sentence. Rainer synergize only decently. No, he synergizes really well. Rainer can produce multiple barracks to quickly rebuild his army and thus won't be helped as much by Chrono Wave. No. Chrono Wave is like if you need to rain down Marines and you got all the minerals to do so, once Chrono Wave hits and if your ally Karax tells you, you can drop a bazillion, you can make it
Oh
rain
no no no
men.
no!
I mean, literally
Missing
make it rain men.
you're missing the big one here. You're missing the big one.
Yeah.
Raynor has a slow economy. He builds his SCVs without buffs, and the only buffs he gets are multiple orbital commands. The very first Chrono Boost is a massive boost to Raynor's SCV production. It's huge!
Yep.
It's enormous!
Yep. Yep.
And upgrades are massive! They're so huge for Raynor!
Very massive.
They're enormous for
Very
Raynor.
massive.
They literally give him extra health if you get the armor upgrades. And what would
Yep.
make the upgrades go faster? Chrono! It's amazing! Chrono's incredible for Raynor.
It,
My goodness.
it is absolutely amazing. And I was gonna hit upon that, but this one just mostly focused on multiple barracks to rebuild his army, so I was keying on that. But yes,
That's
keep
entirely
in
missing the
mind,
point.
Raynor is one of the major one of the commanders where his armor upgrades make a difference. You want to get them. Same with Tychus. So because they add more to his HP pool for his Marines, Firebats, Medics, Marauders, it's major. And being able to get the economy up and going and then being able to churn out those upgrades and you be at 3-3 before
Before
the
10 minutes.
before the third. Yeah, that is major for Raynor,
That's
especially
incredible.
since Raynor is known for having a flimsy army. So, all
Getting
right.
those upgrades will
Next
be
sentence.
incredible for Raynor. Yeah, go ahead.
Reconstruction beam may not affect Raynor's infantry. It affects his bunkers and mechanized units, and that can be bigger. This, I mean, Raynor doesn't have to be just bio. Look at P3 Raynor. And reconstruction beam helps a hell lot for P3 Raynor. The later, which have
Absolutely massive.
survivability, is just higher difficulties. Yes, they do have his bio has survivability issues at later difficulties, but I mean, as long as reconstruction beam is keeping those barracks and factories, starports alive, that's all Raynor needs.
The funny,
His command centers or his orbital command centers. Go ahead.
You know what the funny part is? Yes, Reconstruction Beam does help P3 Raynor, but Chrono Boost helps P3 Raynor even more!
Exactly. Helps him immensely.
He just gets so many.
Immensely.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Drop all the battle cruisers.
Yeah.
Vikings and Marines can help Vikings and Marines can help Karax compensate for his lackluster anti-air capabilities. I would not call Spirit of Doom lackluster anti-air um, lackluster anti-air capabilities. It's just you're focusing too hard, thinking that carriers are his only anti-air. It's like he has.
Static
Let's
defense.
let's let's put name them down. Static defense, anti-air.
Solar lance.
Mirages are anti-air. Solar Lance is anti-air. Orbital Strikes is anti-air.
Purifier beam.
Carriers Fury Fire Beam is huge anti-air, especially against the air comp that stacks up. That just deletes it. So
Energizers.
do not sort of kinda.
Yeah, they are.
But yeah, do not say Karax has a lack of anti-air capabilities. Please look at Spirit of Adun. Shadow cannons for
Yes.
immortals.
All right. I think we've not only ripped this up in half, we've thrown it in the blender and set it on high.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Next up, we have Swan. What do you think, Eveling?
Starting off, yeah, he Arcs does synergize very well with Swan. Pretty much everything in Swan's army is mechanical, so Repair Beam definitely helps that. Uh, Chrono Surge is immensely huge for Swan
Chrono
because
boost, yeah.
a lot of his stuff takes time to build up, getting his upgrades. Uh, Getting those laser drill upgrades are major. And it's not just Chrono Surge. I mean, just chronoing the laser drill. If you see your ally Swan and you know he's getting the upgrades for Conch Beam or just E1 laser drill, chrono that thing if you can spare it. It will help out a lot.
Yeah. I would just like to add maybe a minor thing, but hey. Swan has a visa free repair. if you're having trouble in the first fight, you have like a bunch of Zerglings attacking your base, and you for some reason ran out of spirited energy because you used all on your rocks, and you have a couple of Sentinels fighting them. Have a couple of Swan SCVs behind, and they'll win. They'll win that fight.
Yeah.
They will
A
win
lot of
that fight.
people forget that Swan has free repairs, and it's like it's just yeah, okay, you have a Karax ally. That doesn't mean that Repair Beam's gonna handle everything. If you got a few SCVs around to spare, help a brother out.
Yeah.
Help a brother out.
And this is true. This part that Swan does help the Swan does help Karax's gas problem by getting them the gas drones. But please, if you're a Karax player, do not pester your Swan ally. His minerals are better off spent, especially in the early game, on stuff like upgrades, workers, depots, rates, static defense, infrastructure. He will get the drones when he has time. Please do not annoy your Swan ally by asking for gas drones. He will get them when he gets there. Okay? Anything else to add?
In all fairness, if like if you know your Swan ally is floating a bunch of minerals and you still don't see the gas drones down, then maybe give him a small reminder. As I've played Swan a lot, and I've gone far into the game. Oh, oops, my bad. I'm floating 1,000 minerals, and I forgot to drop gas drones on ally. My bad, ally.
Usually that
So
happens to me at like 6, 7, 8 minutes into the game, where I am starting to float minerals, and that's when I usually drop my gas drones. But before that, every bit of
yep.
mineral counts to build my economy, build my infrastructure, get my laser drill upgrades, get some static defense if needed, get my rate infrastructure going, get my armor upgrades going. It's a lot of things to spend money on.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Please don't look at your Swan ally and say, "Oh, free gas station." No, just try to play the game and think, how would you play the game if my ally wasn't Swan? And
please
if you do get
respect
the gas later,
Swan.
then yeah,
Please respect Swan. He's
yes,
not your gas station, bro. He's his own man.
yes.
He's his own Terran. Let's move on. Nova, what do you think?
Nova, this it's on most of the the surface parts. Her lack of defensive systems is covered by Karax's strong statics. Sort of, kinda, but not really, because Nova has this thing called defensive drones, and I find that a lot of newer players completely ignore it, and it's really, really good. So please use it, and don't say Nova is lacking defensive. It's like
I think they mean static
her
defense.
her defensive. Yeah, her static defense is not the greatest. You got railguns, you
Turrets.
got missile turrets,
Maybe
but
siege
you also
tanks.
got free railguns and siege tanks and liberators. They're also considered defensive part of Nova's defense. It's just not your conventional static defense.
I considered part of the offense, but fair play, fair point.
Yeah.
I mostly agree with this one actually. This one, the only thing missing here for me is the airlifting, because this guy complains a lot about how Karax is mobile, and then ignores how Nova's airlift can just move Karax where he needs to be.
Yep.
Well, that's
Yeah.
synergy, my bro. That's the
Huge
mobility you were looking
synergy.
for, right? Anyway, mostly agree with it though. This one's very good. This one's fine.
One
Yeah.
thing I would like to add on to this, the Chrono Boost, Chrono Wave quickens her research, cooldown time of facilities, and allows you to have more charges in the long run. That's true and everything. But also keep in mind, most people like to associate Nova as being gas hungry, but a well played Nova is both mineral hungry and gas hungry. Because if you can saturate your minerals early, that means more airstrikes, and airstrike is one of Nova's majorly powerful abilities that has a very short cooldown as long as your minerals can support it.
I call it the kill steal strike.
There you
Anyway,
go. That's how powerful it is.
the kill steal. Anyway, let's move on. Next up, we have Han and Horner. What do you think, Eveling?
I have mixed feelings about this, so let's start on the positive side. So yes, Karax does complement Han and Horner very well because Han and Horner is well known to have sucky defensive static defense. The only static defense they have is missile turrets, and then after that it starts becoming units. So missile turrets, mag mines, widow
Widow
mines.
mines.
You Yeah, they do supplement static defense, but because they're units, they're also subject to things that like Black Death. Um, things that static defense are immune to. Um, Han and Horner's pseudo static defense is susceptible to, which really hurts them on those type of mutations. Black Death, Fatal
Overwhelming.
Attraction,
Fatal attraction.
are overwhelming. Yes. Now the one thing that really grinds my gears is Han and Horder's lack of true reliable defensive structures on maps like Temple of the Past and Dead of Night. And those maps really grinds my gears because I keep on seeing all these IDEF axes. Just that's all they play is Dead of Night, Temple of the Past, and another offender is Void Launch, and it's just Karax is more than that, especially
Especially in Dead of
yeah.
Night.
Uh,
Karax's offense is
well,
fantastic
I
on Dead
mean,
of Night.
yeah, his offense is really good. Space lasers are the best. You can't touch it. Amon can't touch his space lasers other than destroying the solar forge.
Can't touch this.
So you can't touch it. Break the bag pants. Uh,
I'm fine with it,
but
honestly.
otherwise, yeah,
I mean, there are no lies detected
hmm?
here. No lies
Yeah,
detected.
no lies detected.
It's just annoying, but it's true.
Uh, actually, well, I don't know if you could call this a lie, but the last sentence kind of grinds my gears too. He's kind of putting some emphasis on assault galleons with the hangar bays. It's like, kids,
Like a little thing
do
that
not
they just
prioritize getting don't prioritize getting those hangar bays. They are not worth it. If you think that turns them into carriers and are the end all things,
it
they're
does draw
not.
aggro away
The,
from
your
his battle cruisers, so I think it's fine to get it.
Yeah, you mean galleons or battle cruise? I mean, yeah, they do
They
they
do
do
draw
draw aggro away
aggro
from
away
the
from
battle
battle
cruisers.
cruisers. It's pretty good.
Yeah, yeah,
But
but
yeah,
it's pretty good. But yeah, invest your gas elsewhere before you get the hangars, please.
okay, yeah. Let's move on.
Okay, ready.
Tychus?
Tychus, reasonable synergy with Karax. I'd say, I mean, he hits upon the surface of it, but there's more nuances to Tychus that he's missing. So while he can't take advantage of Chrono Wave as his research and training times are non-existent, no, you can make very good use of Chrono Wave to saturate your economy because Tychus is very mineral
Mineral
dependent.
intensive.
So the sooner you saturate, the better. And his engineering base, those are all time gated. So
Yes.
you being able to queue those up during your chrono wave can be huge. I think it's very underplayed how important the attack and armor upgrades are for Tychus. I mean, yes, his war gear is important, but also getting that early armor upgrade can really make Tychus very durable, and while buys you the time to get more minerals so you can get all your other war gear and all that
Yeah.
other good
I
stuff.
think the chrono boost on the workers is probably the best thing for Tychus here because everything is mineral gated. Even even the engineering bay upgrades are mineral gated. So the faster you can get your workers, and chrono boost does help with that, the sooner you can get all your upgrades. Even outlaws.
And then one thing I would like to say here that hasn't been mentioned. I mean, yeah, okay, most of Tychus's outlaws are not affected by repair
Serious.
beam, but there is one
He's
that's
seriously good.
seriously good. So, and especially, I don't know if any of you have experience, um, Tychus, Sirius, turrets, P2 combined with T1 Chrono Surge.
Oh
That
my goodness.
is some
And that's
scary
incredible.
DPS coming out of that.
Oh, by
Yeah.
the way, the Odin
Um,
also benefits from the repair beam.
yep. Yep.
Yes.
Making it even more tankier than it really is.
That
So,
already is.
yeah.
So yeah,
Just don't think it's tanky enough to take on a Poopa
but
please.
in general, I think it's pretty much spot on. It's just missing a few things, but it's generally correct. I
Yeah.
think. All right,
Yeah.
let's move
Yeah.
on.
Generally,
Okay, so the Arcturus section is missing, so there's not any description here about how Karax synergizes with Arcturus. But what do you think, Eviling?
so Octurus, there are a lot of good synergies with Octurus and Karax. So, it, a lot of his major structures, ESOs,
Oh,
they're
oh,
all mechanical structures. And let's talk about the hilarity of ESOs plus P1 Karax Chrono Surge. You want something dead, like way dead. That's the way to
no,
go.
no, no,
It
no,
makes Oblivion Express look like a joke.
no. If you want something dead, you use weapons. You use Chrono Boost with Earth Splitters. If you want something like atomized, if you want something turned to dust, if you want something vaporized, that's what you use. My goodness, that's insane.
Yes.
Uh, Another
Yes, and then
synergy, yeah,
even after Chrono Surge, you still can put Chrono P1 Chrono on Earth Splitter too. So yeah, the the aspect of building extra nexuses just for the Chrono and become a thing. So yeah,
yeah.
the repair beam on Pride of August grads, repair
Pretty
beam
great.
on yeah, yeah, it's there's a lot of synergy to be had. And then even if you're going through if you're trying to play with troopers, yeah, getting those attack upgrades is definitely helpful. So
And Unity Barrier.
there's a Unity barrier. Well, depending if you want. Unity barrier comes off real easily, so it doesn't really affect P3 that much. It allows them to get even closer. So it's like, hi guys,
Yes.
kill me, and here's a boom in your face.
Plus, another thing that even if you're not using the first prestige for Karax, the Earth Splitters give vision for your top bars. So even if
Hmm.
they only hit ground and the enemy's air based, it will give vision for Karax's Solar Lance when the attack waves hit, and all your allies Earth Splitters can do is destroy the ground portion. You as a Karax Solar Lance the air portion, and that's that. That's the attack wave.
Then, kind of speaking to the Royal Guard side of it, everyone knows how hard Aegis Guards hit. Imagine Aegis Guards paired with the Energizer.
Oh my goodness, that's
Yeah,
crazy. Oh wait, okay. I think
there's a lot
that's
to be had.
yeah, that's pretty good synergy. I would say. Let's actually move on. All right, let's move on. How about Kerrigan?
Yeah, Kerrigan, it's a short one because yeah, Zerg doesn't really benefit much from Repair Beam, but he talks about chrono boosting ability to get. I mean, Kerrigan does have a mastery to make her upgrades go fast, but this that on top of chrono boost or just chrono helps it to go even faster so she can get up to speed. And then the major part for Kerrigan is Kerrigan herself. So being able to get out her health upgrade, her energy upgrades quick is can really catapult her early game nicely. And then assimilation aura definitely helps to benefit Karax.
Definitely.
If and then another aspect is if Karax is running a ground army, the malignant creep, can
Omega worms.
can help make them even more durable.
Omega worms.
And Omega worms, yeah, Omega worms, huge, huge in terms of being able to make Karax mobile, and that was one of the things that the earlier author mentioned is lack of mobility. There you go,
Yes.
super mobile now.
And you will not need to make observers because Omega worms are detectors. And they spot for attack
Easy
waves.
detectors.
So you can just see the attack waves hitting your allies' Omega worms, and then you can just use Solar Lance on them. You don't need to make a single observer if you're playing with a Kerrigan. Who knows what she's doing? Uh, that's about it, I think.
Non P1.
Yeah. So let's move on. Zagara. How about Zagara?
Zagara, pretty much everything that's said here is straightforward, just like Zagara, the commander herself. One thing we would like to mention in Homage 222 is bio launchers. You thought Earth Splitters were nuts with Chrono Surge or P1 Chrono Surge. Bio launchers are just as nuts. So
They'll
that could be something fun to have with, especially if you're playing something like Oblivion Express.
they're
Yeah,
allowed to change their name from bile launchers to bile pukers. Bile machine guns, more like, with the first
yeah.
prestige. That'll be funny. I need to see that at some point. Okay.
They'll
Um,
vomit.
but yeah, pretty much everything for Zagara here, spot on. I agree with everything on Zagara. Let's move on. Okay, how about Abathur?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. This is clearly showing that uh, this person doesn't understand Abathur's early game. Abathur is really strong. Has a really strong early game. As long as he can get that one brutalist out, he will carry Karax into the mid and late game very easily. Yes, Toxic Nest works great with Karax static defenses, but you shouldn't be using that solely for that. You shouldn't be using Toxic Nest for spreading creep. You should be using it to farm your early ultimate evolutions and essentially providing the window for Karax to build up. His Chrono Wave can boost research and production. That's true or not, but you kind of don't need it once you get your early evolutions because there's nothing to really research other than your attack and armor upgrades. But um, I I wouldn't say Abathur is hurting to get those upgrades online as early as possible. So yeah.
Yeah, I think this guy
Yeah,
has the other way around.
Spear of Adun does.
Yeah.
Spear of Doom does help with Abathur for early air units. So
I guess.
the
Yeah,
one
Arians.
thing, yeah, that Abathur suffers from is Dominion Battle Group. That hurts him. So definitely,
Yeah, true.
Abathur would appreciate a little help with that.
So if you're
But
Karax,
don't steal.
if you're Karax and you see Abathur before the 1 minute mark running a drone out, putting down toxic nests in front of the enemy base, and then morphing a spore crawler, don't shoot the enemies. You're allowed to shoot stuff like cannons and especially bunkers. You Abathur Alwa, thank you for this. But don't shoot down the units. The units need to hit Abathur's toxic nests for them to give extra biomass. If you hit the units, you're actually taking away from Abathur's early game. If you're Karax, again, write this down. If you're Karax early game and your Abathur is trying to get early biomass, shoot only static defense and air units. Nothing else on the ground. Static defense, air units, nothing else. Let your Abathur ally cook, because if he gets a fast Brutalisk, you're essentially free for the next 8 minutes to just focus on your economy. Don't have to worry about defense. Don't have to worry about pushing. Your ally Abathur will do all that for you. Just focus at home, build your army or fleet, whichever you want, get your upgrades, power up, fill your economy, and get ready to push at the 10-minute mark with your fleet of carriers or your army of Colossus and Immortals, and just let your ally do the early game. If your ally Abathur is getting early biomass, let him do the early game. Let him cook. Anything else to add?
The only caveat to that is, let's say you have a mutation like Avenger, and a whole bunch of Zerglings come through, and you pop most of them. As long as the toxicness pops on the enemy, you're free to hit it, because that already makes them pop more biomass already. And especially if you got an Avenger Zergling, your Abathur ally could lose his roach to that. So help him out there as long as that one unit did get hit by the toxic nest.
That's true. That's fair. Okay, let's move on. How about Stukov?
Yeah, they mention a lot of things, but yeah, it's pretty on point. Yeah, chronoing the infested compound definitely helps Stukov a lot, because that's the major time gate for the compound. Stukov in general, just due to his nature, if not P1, he provides a lot of vision because you got infested walking all over the place. So probing around, and if you see something that the infested can't handle, you can start orbital striking or solar. Try to use solar lance first before orbital striking. But yeah, and then the part. Because of Karax's more consistent orbital strike and solar lance abilities, allowing Stukov to save his Apocalypse and Alexander from more party engagements. As the Stukov, unless you are very cognizant of what you're saving your Apocalypse or Alexander for, don't sit on it. Use it so that way that's less for Karax to burn energy on, or have to burn energy on in the early game. Late game, he's got all the energy he wants as long as he's up up to par with his solar efficiency upgrades. But early on, he needs to preserve that. So use your Apocalypse and
Use it.
Alexander so he doesn't have to burn that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. One thing I was looking for here is a synergy with the first prestige of Stukov, the Frightful Flesh Welder, because his mech stuff will thank Karax for the repair beam. That is pretty good, especially when you can't have
Mm.
SCVs on the map and repairing. Also, besides that, the Brood Queens might help Karax if they alleviate the need for observers. They can just give the Ocular Symbiote to your carriers, your Colossus, even to your probe, and not have to worry about detection. And conversely, if you're Karax and you have a lot of observers around, your ally might not need to make a starport or even overseers, which are great because you don't have to rely on detection. Either way, detection wise, they help each other out. Uh, yeah, pretty much
Mhm.
it. What else? Anything else?
Yeah. One thing I would suggest. Another way for characters to get vision. Observers are one, but you can also use mirages, and then Ocular Symbiote on mirages
Yeah.
fulfills a good role.
Oh, and on defensive maps like Dead of Night, Minor Evac, if you are first prestige of Karax and you find that costs are expensive, don't worry. Siege tanks exist for Stukov, and they're great. They're very good,
Fantastic.
fantastic, incredible. So yeah, that's it. Let's move on. The Haka. How about the Haka?
So yeah, I don't disagree that Dahaka and Karax have situational synergy. Regardless, being able to chrono out so that he gets his attack upgrades, and I mean, the more to a lesser extent his armor upgrades. It definitely helps Dahaka out. And getting all the upgrades through your pack leaders dens. Uh, Again, defense kind of burns my bacon that he's mentioning Temple of the Past at Dead of Night, and just thinking about all the iDef fanatics that love those maps. Um, but one thing I do not see here that is major for Dahaka: detection. That's one of Dahaka's hurting points early on, is
Early detection.
detection.
Yeah, for remove
Um,
unseen.
yeah, pretty much his only form of detection before you can get your primal worms up.
Is his
Roar.
butt.
And that's all you got, and it's not really a detection, and jumping on them. So
His butt is
you gotta
detection.
have to make do. Yeah, butt plop. But yeah, Karax, place a cannon. Dahaka will greatly appreciate that.
What? Early
Or
game?
Karax's other
No.
detection.
Sorlance.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So
Right?
Solar Lance,
Cannon.
Orbital Strike. Yeah,
Uh,
jeez,
cannon. Waste of money. Come on, it's the early
I
game.
guess.
It's the early game. You don't make the forge that fast in the early game, do you? Unless it's we move and scene, it might be worthwhile. But
Yeah, and that's what we mentioned before. So
all
yes,
right, all right. Yeah, I kind of agree. That's mostly it for Doc and Karax, though.
yeah.
Doc is
Yep.
perfectly fine with defending. You
Oh,
can just
and
have
we've
Palers.
uh, we forgot the last sentence, which is the huge offense. And on maps that rely heavily on pushing Karax is unable to reliably support the Haka in the mid game. That is wrong,
That's wrong on so many
wrong,
levels
and
because
ultra wrong.
that's wrong on so many levels because the Haka doesn't need Karax's help pushing in the first place. What if the Haka asks for help? You tell him to get good. He doesn't need help pushing.
Yeah, pretty much. Yes. I mean, by then he should have Glevig out, and pushing is what Glevig does best. And if, in the off chance that he does need help, Karax has Spear of Adun. So you got the Hawk already getting you vision. You just
Laser.
space laser it down and kill stuff.
Exactly.
And then one thing I would like to mention,
Yeah.
unlike Abathur, Haka doesn't care if you kill steal, because
The essence is the
It
same.
it doesn't rely on the toxicness. Yeah, the essence is the same. So if the Haka needs help him out.
Help him out. This is not Abathur. Abathur, you gotta be careful helping because your help will reduce the biomass. The Haka, help away.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
No note here about Stet Boy. What do you think about Stet Boy synergy with Karax?
Oh, Pet Boy synergy is amazing.
Off the charts.
It's
Incredible. You have current boost and blue zone.
Yep, and Step Boy, all of Step Boy's units are mechanical. Everything is mechanical. So repair beam, it goes to town. Now, with that being said, be careful about using repair beam because it only can go on so many things at one time. So don't get too careless with it. But
I mean, repair beam is
yeah,
not
it's
it's not the manual ability. It just kind of does something on its own. You can't not use the
yep,
repair beam.
yeah,
I think
pretty much.
I think the one thing you do have to watch out for is when Statboy's Ultralisks start sucking your carriers for health, start sucking your Legionnaires, your Sentinels rather, for help or for health, because that's an ability they have when they get damaged. Though Green Zone does help out a lot in helping keep your units alive. Your tanky Sentinels will have Green Zone and they'll never die. Pretty much.
Yep. And then you got Stet Boy in the air who freaking or Super Gary that never dies.
Never dies
So,
either.
yeah,
My goodness.
yeah. The synergy between Karax and Stetman is off the charts.
Crazy.
And
It's crazy.
we forgot to mention one major thing. Satellites provide vision.
Yeah, vision. You don't
So
even
you
need
can
to.
spread them out. Yeah, if you can spread them to like your objectives, it's like, okay, I can laser it down whenever I want.
Speaking of mobility, the
Yeah.
blue zone also helps with mobility. You can,
Huge mobility boost.
yeah, you can have your carriers move back and forth very quickly. Very nice. I think that's about it for Stet Boy and Karax. Let's move on. Artanis. How about Artanis?
Artanis, yeah, it hits on all the surface stuff for Artanis. One thing I would really like to key in on is if you're playing with a level 15 Artanis, please put a pylon down in their power field. It helps them out in the early game. I've experienced it firsthand where the Karax ally is just putting a pylon down near their base, and it's like, okay, I build my gateway in their pylon field. Ally gets mad and leaves the game. I was like, okay, you're that selfish.
Oh my
Okay,
goodness.
forget you.
I mean, I'll just win the game from
Yeah.
there. Sure, leave the game. It's more
Yeah,
fun for me.
yeah. Than playing with that type of ally. But yeah, pretty much all in all, Karax is a great synergy with Artanis, and vice versa, according to lore.
They can both
It's
go for full air. It's pretty
yeah,
nice.
pretty much.
All right, let's move
Pretty
on.
much.
How about Vorzun?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward for Vorzun. The Chrono Surge helps her a lot because a lot of her upgrades are time gated. Shadow Fury for your Dark Templar, being able to chrono that out is pretty major, and then all her Vorzun herself floats a lot of minerals, so that's in sort of compensation because she's got to build a lot of warp gates. So being able to Chrono Surge and have those warp gates reset quickly to either rebuild an army or start an army can be major for her. Dark pylons having repair beam on dark pylons helps with their longevity is nice. Just note, using a dark pylon to cloak Karax's defensive structures, you want to be a little careful with that because remember, the only thing that's visible to aim on at that point without detection is the dark pylon, so that's going to get focused down. So the Karax player may want to put a couple shield batteries near it.
Or surrounded, so he can
Yep.
get surrounded, so he can get surrounded by the zealots and the zerglings of the enemy.
Yep. Yep.
Uh,
Otherwise,
the
yeah,
only thing missing here for
nothing much more
me,
to add.
yeah, the only thing I would add is Vorazun, specifically Oracles suck. Oracles are terrible. If you're a Karax, send your do a solid for Vorazun. Send her a couple observers. She'll thank you for it. I promise. Oracles suck. Don't don't force your ally to make oracles. Send her your observers. That's it. Pretty much everything else spot on, but yeah, just give her some observers. That's it. That's it.
Give her some love.
Yeah. Move on. Let's move on to Alarak. What do you think?
Yeah, for the most part, this is relatively correct. It's just a little annoyed by the author kind of just saying Karax is only good for defense. It's like, again, Karax can help set up defense, but don't put it on your Karax ally to take care of all the defense.
Especially if
It's
he's a
like
second prestige.
Karax. Yep. Karax overcharge is a very effective form of defense, and is is the enemy always going to be attacking your base? No, you can, as long as you keep one overcharge in the back line, so that when the attack wave comes to your base, you got it. I mean,
If you ask
as long as
me,
you
the
got
answer is always
at
yes.
least more than 20 points of measure.
If you ask me, yes. The answer is
Yes.
always yes. The enemy always attacks my base. They completely ignore my allies. They always attack me. That's how it is. Anyway, I kind
Unless you do a few things to lead to your enemies, to your allies' base.
of
Don't be that person.
anyway.
Um,
The only thing I see here is the only thing I see missing here is that Karax's army is mechanical, and that makes it really synergize with Alarak's Empower Me. He becomes really powerful when you stick your army beside him, and he uses Empower Me. He
it's
just
a huge synergy.
destroys everything. That's pretty much the only big thing that I'm missing here. It's a pretty good synergy too, and yeah, energizers. I completely agree. Energizers are pretty good at buffing your allies' Wrathwalkers and Vanguards, and also the destroyers and the mothership. But conversely, the Havocs will increase the range of your Immortals, your Colossus, your Carriers. That's gonna be
Yep.
insane. My goodness, the Havocs
Yeah,
and the Energizers co-buff each other, incredibly.
but the first sentence kind of burns me. Karax is moderately effective teammate for Karax. No, they synergize, right? Yeah, the only part that of this that another part that really burns me is Alaric is moderately effective teammate for Karax. No, he's a really good synergy with Karax. The only unit that I think doesn't really benefit between the two, I mean, you can't say it's up against, but the more important one, your Ascendants. Yeah, they don't really synergize well with Karax, but don't
Maybe
really
the
need
Unity
to because
barrier.
they're a freaking powerhouse.
Maybe the Unity barrier
So a
helps you
certain
stay
extent, yeah.
alive in the early game.
Unit, yeah,
Maybe
yes,
that's it.
yes, it
I
does.
agree though. It's a minor thing. Not a lot of synergy right there.
Yeah.
So that's about it.
Mhm.
Let's move on. Okay, how about Phoenix?
Yes, first sentence is very correct. Phoenix is a very effective teammate for Karax, and that's where it starts going all downhill. Or not all of it.
All of it.
Yes, all of Phoenix's units are mechanical, so same thing like Stetman. They all benefit from Repair Beam, unless Karax Ally is running P1. But even that kind of hardly it helps, but it doesn't make that much of a difference. Phoenix, I like to think of Phoenix as like the Protoss version of Zerg almost. It's like you just send waves of champions at them. They die,
Yeah.
they come back with Avenging Protocol and hit harder, and you keep on doing that until the enemy is
No longer
dead.
there.
So now, with that being said, if we look further down, Phoenix is not good at pushing. No, Phoenix is
Very good.
incredible at pushing.
He's very good at pushing.
Yeah, that's almost like I mean, it's not the same caliber, but that's like saying Zagara is not good at pushing. It's like
Kind of.
no,
Yeah,
Zagara
kind
is
of.
fantastic as push.
Mm,
So, um, yeah, and saying that Phoenix has no defensive options, keep in mind that Phoenix doesn't need a forge to build cannons. It's like, yeah, it's not on the level as Karax cannons, but he does have defensive options that, if we want to be relative about things, look at Han and Horner. That's limited defensive options.
yeah.
Phoenix has a better options than that. So yes, uh, yeah. Otherwise, the takeaways are Phoenix is good at pushing, so that's what they're saying here is a false. And yeah, he has defensive options. Not the best, but still has.
My only complaint here is about how they didn't really mention the Chrono Boost thing. Chrono Boost helps Phoenix a lot, especially when getting the champion research and their related upgrades. Those are pretty good. And also, when getting carriers, if you want to go for carriers, Phoenix, Chrono Boost is immense. It's immensely helpful. That's about it, I think, though. Oh, also conservators. Conservators are great at making your units even tankier. Reconstruction beam and energizer and conservators. Oh my goodness, that's insane.
Yeah,
That,
and able to the something that I started doing that I really like is you can, if you have a hard time deploying a pylon in a remote area, you warp in, you warp in a conservator, siege it up,
yeah,
build
that's your pylon.
make that's your pylon, and then you recall it with your arbiter to where you want it, and boom, instant pylon.
Instant
You start
pylon.
warping in all your start warping in all your zealots and adepts and go to town
That's
in a
actually
remote
really
location.
nice. All right, so that's about it for Phoenix. Let's move on with the last commander, Zeratul. Cadence good.
Zeratul, cannon's good. I mean, repair beam on projected cannons,
Oh no.
projected monoliths.
I have to stop you there. The projections are all shields. They're all
Yeah,
shields. They don't
yeah.
actually get
Sorry.
repair beam. Don't get ahead of yourself.
Yeah,
But yeah,
my
continue.
bad. My bad. Yeah, but yeah, it most of and then most of Zeratul's army is mechanical. So yeah, there's a lot of synergy between that. Chrono Boost, Chrono Surge, it's not that much, but I mean, just the repair beam in itself is pretty potent, and Zeratul himself is just a powerhouse. So, uh, yeah, he can pretty much most of the time, most Zeratul players will be carrying Karax through the
Yeah,
game.
pretty
So,
much.
no,
That's kind of the synergy
is
here.
that
Zeratul carries Karax.
yeah,
That's the synergy.
and and Karax synergizes with Zeratul just by being there with Repair Beam,
Repair
kind of
beam
like how
and Chrono,
um
the
P1
worker,
Swan, like P1 Swan is is synergizing with any ally just
having a laser.
by queuing into the game. Yeah.
All right, I think that's pretty much it for the Wikia for Karax. Oh, or overall, I think there are some parts it gets right. It's not as bad as the Swan one, but it definitely can
Mm.
stand for some improvements, especially in the synergy section. The guy who writes this, or the guys who write this, have to take into account the way that prestigious have affected commanders. Some of these have made really good strategies, and they synergize well with these commanders. So I think that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for watching. If you have an idea for what else, please leave it in a comment. I'll see you guys next time.